Welcome back to class, and as we move on to Module 7, we are on the last chapter of the textbook, and I do have this here as Module 11, but we're nearing the end of our course. And so this week we are going to move on to look at the end of the text, which gets into some interesting things and looking at how social policy is changing. The book was written during the prior administration. I generally don't try to update text that often because usually there hasn't been much change. And really, aside from some tax changes put through at the earlier part of the Trump administration, not much has really happened with regards to policy through Congress. There has been quite a bit of things done through public administration, which is a whole different side of things. And so that's actually a different course I teach. But through public administration, a lot has happened. But for staying power, a lot of policy hasn't really taken hold. So despite the fact that when Trump came in, he had the House and Senate, not a lot really got done with regards to changing laws. But some could point out that the tax policy that was put through did have a very long-lasting effect because it's a 10-year policy. So it has wrecked economies in some states that have relied on robust tax revenue from local, state, and local taxes. So places like California and New York that were working with taxes up until now, where they're able to offset state and local taxes with the federal, that has really been damaged. But a lot of people point out that will expire in a few years. So again, policy hasn't really changed in the last couple of years, and so but the implementation on the administrative side has, if that makes sense. So as far as this class is concerned, our textbook, where it leaves off is good. That's quite a bit of information. It will probably be updated in the near future for this class. But that's all done to save money for the students and try to give some consistency. Another reason we don't really update with social policy books is to try to remain not too political and in the moment, too topical with the discussion. If that happens, people usually lose sight of what's going on. Although, again, in the last few months, there has been some interesting pushes, so there's a lot to really talk about. But like I said, we just remained at this book. So we're on the end of the chapter, chapter 11. You'll have 2 weeks for this quiz. And what we're going to do is we're going to watch a video of somebody outside of normal policy realm. So we're going to watch Rosa Brooks, who's from Georgetown. She is looking at things from a legal perspective with regards to the Pentagon. And there's a short Dropbox assignment due with that with 4 questions. The video is about an hour. You can answer the questions in the first 35 minutes because she finishes her speech and then spends about 30 minutes answering questions. So if you're interested, you can watch the whole video. If not, you can answer the questions with the first 35 minutes or so. So that's all that's going to happen this week, aside from answering the questions from last week, which I have to add on here to this this checklist. There is the paper that's due this week. Make sure you get it done because there's going to be a Dropbox assignment that's worth 50 points. And you're going to also put that paper as an initial post for a paper discussion that we will have next week for our final week. We have the Chapter 11 quiz, just one discussion post about this week's material. I did have a more topical post actually pertaining to economics, but I did drop that from the class last semester. It just wasn't really a robust discussion and didn't really get anywhere, so I don't want to just waste time with that. But that was a paper looking at, that was a discussion looking at the economic ideals put through earlier in the administration and how those can affect future planning. But of course, that has become a little changed because now we're dealing with a pandemic and slightly different social issues, such as how is school going to look in a couple of weeks when we go back. So people's mind is elsewhere, and of course, that discussion, I decided just to remove that one from the class because I don't want it to really detract. So you're going to do your discussion post, and then you're going to post an initial post to the papers discussion, and that will all be due by next Sunday. So I'm moving through. I do warn you, this video is a little quiet, so when you do listen to it, make sure you have some control over the volume. For some reason, I was just listening to it, and just I was reminded that it was quiet when I showed that prior. But again, you're going to watch Rosa Brooks. Very interesting person. She worked in the Pentagon. She talks a little bit about that, and we get into some different policy. And again, she looks at the legal side of war and how war has been declared on so many things. And there's sociologists who really dig into this, like people like Patricia Hill Collins, who talks about declaring war on drugs and war on crime. She goes into a little different direction. Rosa Brooks does stick with the military in her discussion. But it is really fascinating and gives you just a different area of policy to look at. Again, we have the quiz, the module, the chapter 11 discussion. So we're going to look at globalization, and that's, again, it's very interesting. So read the chapter and answer that question. And then here we have the Dropbox for the papers. And so next week, as we approach next week, there's going to be a couple of things we have. We'll be done with the book, and we'll have a week left of the class. We're going to have about 3 or 4 discussion threads to follow through on. And as we do that, there's also going to be, there's a game called Fiscal Ship, which I'm going to have you do. It's an interesting way to kind of see how policy goes together. I used to throw this in the beginning of the semester, and right now I'm moving it towards the end. So there's going to be a Fiscal Ship game that you're going to do. I might make that available a little early, depending on if everyone gets their papers in, or if there's people having a hard time. But there might be part of the next module made available early, so you can get a running start with that. And then we're going to have a reflective question in looking at this whole class and what you may have taken away from this, or where you may want to go a little further if you had a chance to study policy a little bit longer. So I will update our stuff for next week and have that up for you. Again, make sure you really get your papers done. These are very important. The points for them are high, as well as the fact that we're going to have a discussion on this, that you want to have the paper in so you can do the discussion and read everyone else's paper. Usually this class is offered face-to-face, and last semester as we went online, I had my class ready to do presentations on this. We had the presentations move online, and the feedback that I got from students was they really took away a lot from reading what other people wrote on their policy papers. So this is a chance for you to teach each other. And again, like the discussions, there's a class shouldn't be flat, even if it's online. We should be we should be having a discussion. You should be speaking amongst yourselves and evolving ideas together. That's how a class grows. It's a social learning environment. And so I hope we achieve that here. And again, if you have any questions, make sure you get in touch with me, and I'd be glad to speak with anybody that has any questions or might need any help. Otherwise, have a great week.